In 1997, scientists listening to the Pacific Ocean recorded a sound unlike anything they had heard before. It was deep, powerful, and capable of traveling across thousands of kilometers of open water. For years, people wondered what could have produced it. Some thought it came from an unknown animal, while others believed it was a rare natural event. Today, we're looking at the real story behind this sound, known as the bloop, and what it teaches us about the ocean, science, and how much of our world still remains unexplored. To understand why this sound mattered, we first need to understand how scientists listened to the ocean in the first place. During the Cold War, the United States built a large underwater listening system called SOSUS, which stands for Sound Surveillance System. Its original purpose was military. It was designed to detect submarines moving through the oceans. Later, however, parts of this technology became useful for science. Researchers realized that these underwater microphones, also known as hydrophones, could do much more than track ships. They could detect underwater earthquakes, record volcanic activity on the ocean floor, and monitor whale calls and other marine life. In other words, these hydrophones allowed scientists to hear events that human eyes could not see. The ocean is vast, dark, and difficult to explore directly. Sound, however, travels extremely well underwater. In many situations, listening tells us more than looking. Water carries sound much better than air. In the atmosphere, sounds fade more quickly, but in the ocean, especially at certain depths, low-frequency sound can travel for enormous distances. This is one reason whales are able to communicate across vast stretches of water. It is also why underwater listening systems are so valuable. A powerful sound in one part of the ocean can sometimes be detected thousands of kilometers away. So when an unusual signal appears on more than one hydrophone station, scientists pay close attention, because that usually means the source was significant. That is exactly what happened in the summer of 1997. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, recorded a very unusual sound in the South Pacific Ocean. The signal lasted for about 1 minute. It started as a low-frequency sound and then increased in frequency over time. This rising pattern gave a strange and memorable character. The sound was picked up by multiple hydrophone stations that were very far apart from one another. That detail mattered. It meant the sound was not local, small, or ordinary. It had enough energy to travel across a large part of the ocean. Scientists gave this signal a simple nickname, the bloop. The name may sound almost playful, but the event itself was taken seriously. Whatever caused, it was clearly powerful. The bloop attracted public attention for two main reasons. First, it sounded unusual, not in a supernatural way, but in a way that did not immediately match familiar patterns. Second, the ocean itself already feels mysterious to many people. Most of the deep sea remains difficult to access. The pressure is extreme, there is no sunlight, and the distances are enormous. Because of that, when people hear about a strange sound coming from deep water, their imagination naturally becomes active. Some people began wondering whether the source could have been biological. In other words, could a living creature have made the sound? This question spread online as the story reached websites and documentaries interested in unexplained events. Over time, the mystery became bigger in the public imagination than it was in the scientific record. At first, there were different ideas. Some thought the sound might have come from an unknown animal. This idea became popular because the sound had a pattern that some listeners felt resembled biological noise. Others suggested geological activity beneath the ocean floor. And of course, some people proposed more dramatic explanations, such as hidden creatures, unknown species, or events science could not yet explain. But responsible scientific work does not begin with exciting conclusions. It begins with observation, comparison, and evidence. Scientists had to compare the bloop with known sound signatures. They had to examine where it came from. They had to ask what kinds of natural events in that region were capable of producing such a signal. The goal was not to create a mystery. The goal was to understand a real event as accurately as possible. After further analysis, researchers reached a more grounded conclusion. The bloop was most likely caused by an icequake. An icequake happens when very large masses of ice crack, shift, or break apart. This can happen near Antarctica, where glaciers and ice shelves are constantly under stress from movement, pressure, and temperature changes. When very large pieces of ice fracture or scrape against one another, they can produce powerful low-frequency sounds. These sounds can travel long distances through ocean water. Scientists compared the bloop to later recordings of similar ice-related events and found strong similarities. Over time, the scientific explanation became much more confident. The bloop was not evidence of an unknown sea creature. It was most likely a natural sound caused by large-scale ice movement in the Southern Ocean region. This explanation is important because it shows how science works. A strange event is recorded. Questions are raised. More data is gathered. Patterns are compared. And eventually, a more complete understanding is reached. That does not make the story less interesting. In some ways, the real explanation makes it even more meaningful. Think about what this tells us. A cracking mass of ice, far from cities, far from human life, deep in one of the most remote regions on Earth, produced a sound powerful enough to be recorded across a huge part of the ocean. That is not small. That is not ordinary. It reminds us that the natural world contains forces far greater than anything we experience in everyday life. The ocean is not empty. It is active, dynamic, and full of processes that most of us never witness. Even without turning the story into fantasy, the event remains deeply impressive. The world is already full of wonder without needing exaggeration. The bloop also reminds us how limited our exploration still is. Scientists often say that we know more about the surface of some planets and moons than we do about the deep ocean floor on our own planet. Large parts of the seabed remain unmapped in detail. New marine species are still being discovered. Deep ocean ecosystems continue to surprise researchers. There are creatures that glow in total darkness, creatures that survive under crushing pressure, and creatures that live near underwater volcanic vents where conditions seem impossible. So while the bloop itself likely has a natural explanation, the larger lesson remains the same. There is still much we do not know. That should not make us afraid. It should make us humble. It should make us curious. Human knowledge has grown enormously, but the world is still bigger than our understanding of it. And sometimes a single sound from the deep ocean is enough to remind us of that. The bloop was real. The recording was real. The mystery was real. And while science has given us a strong explanation, the story still points to something important. Our world is vast, powerful, and full of things we are still learning to understand. If you enjoy calm, factual videos about the ocean, history, and the unexplained parts of the natural world, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.